Welcome to the Complete AI Guide, your commute-friendly podcast, brought to you by georgeebbiematthew.com. We are now on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcast. Like, follow, share, and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Today, we are getting into a really critical update in the world of AI governance. We're looking at a new framework that tries to shift the whole conversation from these abstract principles to actual concrete things an organization can do.
That's right. It takes this huge, complex topic of AI safety and, well, it boils it down to 6 essential practices.
So for this episode, we are unpacking the guidance for AI adoption. This comes from Australia's National AI Centre, published in October 2025.
And it's the first big revision to the 2024 Voluntary AI Safety Standard, or VAIS. Our mission today is to really unpack how this new approach streamlines everything into a much leaner, more effective roadmap.
And really, if you're building AI or buying it or deploying it anywhere in the world, this is something you're going to want to hear.
Absolutely.
Because what this framework does is it gives you a clear, globally aligned blueprint for building trust and, handling the unique risks that come with AI.
Right. It's not trying to drown you in ethical dilemmas. It's giving you the practical steps, the how-to, for putting safeguards in place without just, killing your ability to innovate.
It's the shortcut you need to feel confident about AI responsibility. So let's start with the context. Why did this update even happen?
It was really driven by necessity. The original VAISS, it had 10 guardrails, which was comprehensive, but...
A little too comprehensive, maybe.
Exactly. The feedback was that the complexity was actually a barrier, especially for smaller businesses. They just couldn't keep up.
I think we've all seen that. You have these great principles, but the overhead, the administration, is just too much for a small team, so they end up doing nothing at all.
Precisely. So the architects of this new guidance took those 10 guardrails and condensed them into these 6 much more streamlined practices, and crucially, they expanded the audience.
So it's not just for the big tech developers anymore.
Not at all. It now explicitly targets both AI developers, the DEVs, and AI deployers, the DEPs. It recognizes that, safety is a shared responsibility all the way down the supply chain.
From the training data to the final user interface.
The whole thing. And they also made the documentation itself scalable.
Oh, how so?
They split it into 2 layers to solve that resource problem. There's a foundations version. It's super accessible for organizations just starting out. And then there are the detailed implementation practices for, the governance experts who need all the technical details.
That tiered approach seems key to getting people to actually use it.
It is. And this whole thing is really designed to address what the 2025 Responsible AI Index called the saying-doing gap.
Let's talk about that statistic because it is staggering.
Yeah.
78% of companies agreed with all the core ethical AI principles. They want to do the right thing.
Only 29% had actually implemented any consistent practices.
That's a huge gap.
It's the whole reason this new guidance exists. Because translating be fair into adjust your model's calibration metrics across 6 demographic variables, that's a massive leap.
Especially for those small to medium businesses, the ones with, 20 to 99 employees. Yeah. They don't have a dedicated risk department.
Right. This new approach aims to make the doing part of it affordable and just manageable.
So if the problem is complexity, the solution is clarity. What are the core ideas, the philosophies that hold these 6 practices together?
It really boils down to 2 main foundational principles. The first one is a human-centered approach.
Okay.
This prioritizes safety, human rights, and fairness. It's aligned with global agreements like the Bletchley Declaration, and a big focus within that is on diversity, inclusion, and fairness.
And they got really specific with the language they used to define the risk here, didn't they?
They did. They defined unwanted bias very clearly as the systematic difference in the treatment of certain people or groups that results in unfavorable or, importantly, unlawful outcomes.
So by moving from just bias to unwanted bias, you now have something you can actually measure and mitigate.
You know exactly what you're supposed to be looking for. And the second principle is all about making this work on a global scale. It's international consistency.
Which makes sense. Companies don't operate in a bubble.
Absolutely not. The guidance makes sure it aligns with global standards like ISO 42001 and the US NIST AI Risk Management Framework. It's pragmatic. It means a global company doesn't have to reinvent the wheel for every country it operates in.
I get the pragmatism, but I have to ask, does focusing so much on international consistency risk watering down some of the more, local challenges that a country like Australia might face? Does one size really fit all?
That's a fair point, and it's always a trade-off with global governance. But the guidance tries to solve this by making the structure consistent, while the content can be tailored.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Later on, when we get to data governance, there's an explicit rule about adhering to indigenous data sovereignty. That's a very specific local requirement that you wouldn't necessarily find in, say, the US NIST framework.
I see. So the framework is global, but the specific rules can be local.
Exactly. The structure is global, the requirements are relevant.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's get into the why. Why do we need 6 new AI rules when we've had IT risk management for decades?
Well, the fundamental thing here is the shift from predictable code to unpredictable risk. Traditional software, it follows logic you wrote. If it breaks, you can trace it back.
But AI isn't like that.
Not at all. AI learns patterns. The decision logic is often a black box. It's opaque, and it's less predictable. We know how it performs, but not always why it chose one thing over another.
And that opacity, that unpredictability, it just gets amplified with more complex systems.
Exponentially. You have to treat narrow AI differently from general purpose AI or GPAI, and especially differently from the really complex agentic AI. GPAIs are risky because of their complexity, their emergent capabilities that can surprise even their creators, and how easily they can be misused.
And the guidance seems particularly concerned about the human-centric harms these systems can cause when they're deployed at scale.
Precisely. They break the risks down into 3 layers of potential harm. First, harm to people.
So direct impacts.
Right. Things like getting denied a loan unfairly or even losing your job because of a biased algorithm. Then there's harm to groups and communities where AI systems make existing discrimination even worse.
And the third category, harm to societal structures, that's where the stakes get existentially high.
Absolutely. This is where you see fundamental threats. Think about misinformation campaigns undermining elections, or an autonomous system failing and taking out a power grid or a hospital systems. The guidance makes it clear that preventing these huge societal harms is directly linked to an organization's own risk.
Okay, so if the problem is this emergent risk, and the philosophy is human-centered and consistent, then these 6 practices must be the answer. Let's get into this blueprint.
Let's do it.
Practice 1. Decide who is accountable. This feels like basic management, but I'm guessing in the complexity of AI, it gets lost.
It's the cornerstone, but it's so often overlooked. It's meant to solve that responsibility gap where with a complex system, everyone can just point fingers at everyone else.
The vendor, the data scientist, the IT guy.
Everyone. So the key action here is non-negotiable. You must appoint a senior leader, a specific person, as the overall owner for AI governance. And then another specific person must be accountable for every single AI system you use.
So if my HR department is using a third-party tool to screen resumes, the head of HR can't just blame the vendor.
No, they have to have someone internally who owns that tool's performance and safety, and that responsibility goes backwards too. The developer has to be transparent with the deployer about the risks and limitations.
So accountability is a chain.
The entire ecosystem is chained together.
Okay, so if practice 1 is about setting up the structure, then practice 2, understand impacts and plan accordingly. This is where the rubber meets the road.
That's a perfect way to put it. AI operates at speed and scale. That biased hiring algorithm we mentioned. It's not just rejecting one person unfairly. It could systematically exclude hundreds before a human even notices there's a pattern.
The impact is just magnified. So what's the process for understanding those impacts?
The key action is you have to conduct detailed stakeholder impact assessments. You must look at vulnerable groups who might be hit the hardest, and you're looking for unwanted bias, economic harm, even physical safety risks.
And what if someone realizes the AI made a mistake about them, like a bad credit score or something?
You must have clear, accessible, and functional channels for feedback and redress. It can't be buried in a 20-page document. People need an easy way to report a problem and challenge a decision, and the organization has to have a way to actually fix it.
Right. So practice 3 is measure and manage risks. How does this formalize the difference between old school software risk and this new AI risk?
This is where it gets a bit more technical. The core idea is that risks evolve over time, so you need a dynamic, AI-specific risk framework. And critically, you have to manage different types of AI differently.
You can't use the same rules for a simple chatbot as you would for something much more complex.
Exactly. A narrow AI, like a recommender system, is not the same as a GPI, and it's certainly not the same as an agentic AI.
Could you just quickly explain why agentic AI is so different?
Well, narrow AI has a predictable scope. GPAI is more complex, but it's still mostly reactive. Agentic AI, though, it's designed to be autonomous. It can take actions on its own to achieve a goal, often without a human in the loop for long
So
periods.
the risks are totally different.
Totally. You're managing for autonomy failure, for the unintended consequences of it trying to achieve its goal, for a sudden emergence of new capabilities. It needs way more testing and much tighter controls.
And how do the developers communicate all this complex risk information to the people actually using the system?
They have to use standardized formats. The guidance pushes for tools like model cards or system cards.
They're like nutrition labels for the AI,
That's the perfect analogy. They communicate the risks, the intended use, the limitations, all of it to people who didn't build the model.
which leads us to practice 4. Share essential information. This is the big transparency piece.
It is. And the first key action is that organizations have to maintain a centralized, up-to-date AI register. It's basically a master list of every single system you use.
Every system, both in-house and
Every
third-party.
system. Its purpose, its status, its limitations, the data it uses, all of it.
That sounds great, but what about agility? You've got a dozen teams all deploying open source models to solve small problems. How do you enforce that without slowing everyone down?
That is the classic governance tension, right? The guidance says the governance owner from practice 1 has to define the threshold for registration. Not every tiny experiment needs the same level of oversight, but anything used for critical functions or high-stakes decisions has to be on that register before it goes live.
So it's about proactive policy, not reactive chaos.
Exactly. And then there's the other side of transparency, the output side.
What the user sees.
Right. Key action 2 is output transparency. You have to implement proportionate ways to show that content is AI generated. Think watermarks or labels or just clear signs that you're interacting with a machine. And for the big GPAI systems, developers have to share details about their training data and any tests for dangerous capabilities.
Okay, next up, practice 5. Test and monitor. If a system works on day 1, why do you need to keep testing it?
Because the world changes. AI systems suffer from what's called concept drift. The data the model sees in the real world starts to shift over time, and its accuracy can degrade. New biases can creep in.
So before you deploy, you're testing against clear criteria. What about for the really high-risk systems?
For high-risk cases, the guidance says you should be considering independent evaluation or stress testing, which is often called red teaming.
What exactly is red teaming for an AI?
It's essentially hiring a team to try and break your AI. They're not just checking performance metrics. They're actively probing for vulnerabilities, for dangerous emergent behaviors, for ways it could be misused. They are trying to make it fail in unexpected ways.
And you mentioned data governance here had a really specific requirement.
Yes. Beyond the usual things like documenting data quality and where it came from, organizations must adhere to requirements like indigenous data sovereignty, which we touched on earlier.
And for our global listeners, could you just quickly recap what that means?
Sure. Indigenous data sovereignty is the principle that indigenous communities have the right to own and control data that comes from their members, their land, or their knowledge. For AI, it means if your training data relates to indigenous peoples, you have to follow protocols defined by those communities to protect their rights and knowledge.
Which brings us to the end, the final safety net. Practice 6. Maintain human control.
This is the ultimate safeguard. The key action here is defining meaningful human oversight. And this can't just be a tick box exercise. The level of human involvement has to match the system's autonomy and how high the stakes are.
So for a movie recommender, automated monitoring is probably fine. But for a medical diagnosis tool,
You'd need mandatory human review. The oversight has to be meaningful. And this practice also demands you build in technical safeguards,
the kill switches.
basically. Override mechanisms to take over, pause functions to stop the system, and rollback mechanisms to undo any damage. And for mission-critical things like utilities or emergency services, you always have to maintain a non-AI alternative pathway, just in case the system fails completely.
This whole framework seems so effective because it moves AI governance out of the philosophy department and into, actionable policy. It's accountability, impact assessment, risk measurement, transparency testing, and human control. It's a real path to building trust and actually getting those productivity gains people talk about.
I think what's fascinating is the clear message underneath it all. AI success, in the long run, it won't depend on how powerful the systems get. It's going to depend on how responsibly we design them, deploy them, and govern them. And this guidance, it finally provides the practical steps to make that responsible governance a reality.
Thank you for joining us on the Complete AI Guide podcast, and follow, share, and subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode.